Hello, hello, hello. How are we all doing? Lofi's in the chat. How you doing, my friend? Cynical decision. Yikes. How's it going? Mayo as well. Do. Dark one. Dear. YS. DYN. Yusvin, maybe? Brody, how's it going? Are we ready for the Dutch Grand Prix? Are we ready for a Dutch Grand Prix that is pole position, that is headed by a McLaren car? That's what we like to see, isn't it? And we are ready and raring to go. Although Max Verstappen starting second place does have me a little bit worried. Hello, everybody in the chat. Ethan's in there. TV's in there. Grass Puddle, Goose Bug, Samadi, Heidi, Alex, Soam, Nuki. Hello, 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 hello. Logan Sargent on the radio, of course, actually able to take part in today's session. Wasn't able to take part in qualifying yesterday. And a few bits to get into post-qualifying. Shall we jump straight into it? With the news that Lewis Hamilton is going to have a 3-place penalty after a pretty disastrous qualifying session from the 7-time world champion. He takes the 3-place penalty for obstructing Sergio Perez. We sort of saw it at the time. It went under the radar a little bit. It was one of those things where it was like, did he impede Sergio Perez enough? Was it worthy of a penalty? It was kind of 50-50. Sergio Perez was very angry about it. Even gave Lewis Hamilton a little bit of a wave by as he went past in the pits. So it was one of those where it was like, okay, not sure how this has gone. Obviously, then Sergio Perez had to use an extra set of soft compound tyres in Q1, which he wasn't very happy about either. And then after the qualifying itself, it went to the stewards. The stewards had a little look, and they deemed that Lewis Hamilton, although he did move across in turn 8 to try and get away from other cars that were coming past, as he went through turn 9, he was in the way of Sergio Perez. So drops down 3 positions. And I mean, he was already starting outside of the top 10. He's now started, 15th? 14th or 15th? Can't remember off the top of my head now. It's going to be a pretty horrid race for Lewis Hamilton, you would imagine. And he already, after qualifying, was saying the weekend is pretty much done. So if he's now dropping 3 more places, not only is it done, it's extra done for Lewis Hamilton this weekend in Zandvoort as he starts his final half of the season with the Mercedes team. It's not up to the start that he would wanted to. Obviously, 2 wins in the last 4 races before we headed into the summer break. Not really the way he would have wanted it to go. Alongside that, we also had news of Alex Albon. Alex Albon, after qualifying, a stunning qualifying for Alex Albon, in which he got his Williams into Q3. Looked like the Williams, with those upgrades, was revitalized. He was disqualified because his car was illegal. The rear side of the car, or the rear of the car, and the underside of the car is what I'm looking for. The underside of the car, the actual flooring itself has to sit within a certain volume. That was tested after qualifying. It didn't sit within that volume, and therefore he was disqualified. Likely will have to start from the pit lane because he will have to swap around some bits and pieces on that Williams car. Frustrating for Williams. As I said, like their big upgrade package coming this weekend. Finally felt like the Williams could take that big step forward, something they've been hoping to do for a long time. They ended up kind of shifting a lot of their upgrades after the summer break rather than prior to the summer break because of those crashes right at the beginning of the season. You might remember Alex Albon crashing in Australia, Logan Sargent and Alex Albon both crashing in Japan. Those early crashes then put Williams on the back foot a little bit. They finally got their upgrades on the car, and he was disqualified because those upgrades actually made the car slightly illegal by the tiniest of margins, but those margins do make the difference in Formula One. And as we saw before the summer break with George Russell, even if you are 1.5 kilograms under that weight limit, there is a clear defined line. And Alex Albon's, the rear, keep saying the rear, the underside of the car, the floor of the car was too wide effectively for what it should be allowed to be in Formula One. So disappointing for Alex Albon, disqualified, won't be starting in the points, obviously shuffles everybody up a position because Alex Albon slots to the back of the grid. Logan Sargent also at the back of the grid as well. Be interesting to see what the two Williams cars can do from there, right? Because Sargent starting 18th, Albon starting 19th. It's pretty tough going for the Williams cars. And this is a circuit that they usually do quite well at, so that's quite annoying for them. But as you can see, that does move Carlos Sainz up into the top 10 after just missing out in Q2 yesterday. The Spaniard was very, very upset with his performance. Thank you for subscribing, Hammer006 to the channel. Sad for Albon. Yeah, it's pretty devastating for Alex Albon. After it felt like he'd put in a he did put in a really good qualifying performance. He didn't know that the car was slightly out of the jurisdiction that you're allowed. He put in a really solid lap time, got that Williams through into Q3, joined the likes of, Pierre Gasly in Q3, one of those cars that's not really in there all the time, but just wasn't able to quite, or the team wasn't able to quite justify that car being where it should be to the FIA, and the stewards then took that away from them. I did want to talk about the front runners very quickly. A few people were asking kind of where was that time gained by Lando Norris yesterday. He was so much quicker than everybody else. You can see here he was 4/10 quicker than Max Verstappen yesterday in qualifying. 4/10 quicker than Max Verstappen in qualifying yesterday. And a lot of people are asking, like, where did that time actually come from? So we'll delve into that a little bit. Oh, is this going to work? Hello? There we go. So let's have a little look at where Lando Norris actually managed to gain some of that time. I've kind of indicated the key turning points throughout the lap for you on this chart. Thank you to F1 Tempo for putting these together. As you can see, coming out of turn 1, just Lando Norris got a much better drive out of turn 1. Both of them actually braking at a fairly similar point for turn 1, getting a fairly similar turn 1 exit as well. But then just driving off turn 1, Lando Norris able to make up so much time through turn 1, turn 2, turn 3. Like getting out through turn 1 into turn 2, much quicker through turn 2, Lando Norris. It's not like the heaviest corner you'll ever see in your life, but much quicker from the McLaren. Then turn 3, Max Verstappen kind of gets back onto it. You can see here as well, as Lando Norris accelerates through turn 4, 5, and 6. So Zandvoort's a little bit weird in that turns 4, 5, and 6, they are turns, but they are pretty much flat out, as you can see from both of the drivers here. No real problems for them. And just a little bit more top line speed from the McLaren. You can see Max Verstappen just getting a little bit further away from Lando Norris through that section, through that sort of 4, 5, 6S that you've kind of got. Then it was turn 7, actually, where Max Verstappen was able to really grab some time back. You see here how much faster Max Verstappen was going through turn 7 compared to Lando Norris. And that's interesting because turn 7, quite a long, sweeping corner, and therefore showing that maybe Max Verstappen's car just running a little bit more downforce. Maybe Red Bull opting to go towards possibly, if the race does become wet, that might play into the hands of Red Bull a little bit better, possibly running that little bit of extra downforce, because able to carry more speed and closing in to Lando Norris through turn 7, through turn 8 as well. Then through turn 9, turn 10, I was expecting Lando Norris to escape a little bit. He did a touch. You can see Max Verstappen actually into turn 10, almost identical times to Lando Norris, possibly even a little bit ahead of Lando Norris here. I'm just having a little look. It's within touching distance. You're talking thousandths of a second between Lando Norris and Max Verstappen once they get to turn 10. So all of that good work that Lando Norris had put in from turns 3 to turn 7 had kind of dwindled away through turns 7, 8, 9, and 10. So Max Verstappen, clearly the heavier downforce, clearly a little bit better through those slower corners that we have, the longer sweeping corners as well. So that middle section really going in favor of Max Verstappen. But then you can see the top line speed of the McLaren coming to its rescue again. Between turn 10 and turn 11, you've got a little bit of a straight. Opens up. Gets maybe a little bit better of a drive off of there as well, does Lando Norris, and able to just get the foot down. Interesting that Lando Norris does break that little bit earlier than Max Verstappen as well. It's marginal, but again, just shows possibly that the Red Bull has that little bit more downforce and the McLaren running a little bit more of a straight line speed advantage, and that balance between whether the straight line speed of the McLaren will come to fruition, or if it does get wet, it does get rainy, you'd want that little bit of extra downforce maybe from the Red Bull car. I think that also bodes well for an interesting race. If Max Verstappen does manage to get in front of Lando Norris towards the beginning of the Grand Prix, Lando Norris has got that extra top line speed advantage. Maybe that does just open the door for him to be able to actually attack Max Verstappen. Whereas if Lando Norris goes into turn 1 ahead, Max Verstappen having that little bit less straight line speed than the McLaren car, it's going to be a lot more difficult for Max Verstappen to attack. Again, through turns 12, so turns 11 and turns 12, you see Max Verstappen gain that advantage back. So again, it's those longer sweeping corners once more that do show and do seem to be the thing that is gaining time in the Red Bull car. But actually, possibly a little bit of a mistake from Max Verstappen. We've seen a lot of cars get a little bit out of shape through turn 11, through turn 12. Possibly the same for Verstappen because he just doesn't get anywhere near as good enough the drive off towards turn 13. You can see that Lando Norris getting much, much higher at top speed than Max Verstappen towards turn 13, then into the braking zone. Turn 13, a really high speed corner. So Lando Norris continuing to have okay advantage over Max Verstappen, and then that straight line speed advantage helping through turn 14 as well. And eventually meaning that from turn 11, right? So from turn 11, it is equal between Max Verstappen and Lando Norris. It is literally turn sort of 13 and 14 and the drive off of turn 13 or turn 12 and turn 13 being so much better for Lando Norris. He's able to gain almost 0.4 of a second through just that final sector of the track. Apart from that, it was very to and fro between Verstappen and from Lando Norris. And I think Lando can find himself a little bit lucky, possibly, that he was 0.4 quicker. I don't think the advantage of the McLaren is quite that heavy, but did really, really well in the circumstances. And you have to hand it to Lando Norris. Delivered when he needed to deliver in terms of getting in front of Max Verstappen and out-qualifying him, getting himself onto that pole position. So very, very impressive, Lando Norris. It does have to be said. I do think Lando Norris, the thing now for him is obviously going into turn 1. Is he going to be able to keep hold of the lead? We've seen it in Barcelona where he allowed that door to open. He ended up losing the position not only to George Russell, but also to Max Verstappen as well. It's going to be very, very tight between the two of them going down in towards turn 1. And I do think that kind of balance between the Red Bull being set up a little bit more high downforce, the McLaren maybe a little bit less downforce, but a bit better straight line speed, maybe a little bit more traction. We know that the McLaren is also better at holding onto its tyres for longer stints. At an old track like Zandvoort, that can be really, really helpful. It's going to be really, really tough. And a really interesting battle between Lando Norris and Verstappen. Whichever one wins out of those two, I think is going to be a deserved winner today. I don't think anybody's going to run away with it at the front of the pack. Oscar Piastri then behind in 3rd place. George Russell in 4th place, I think, is a very interesting one as well, because we've seen the Mercedes not quite clicking this weekend in the way that they wanted it to. George Russell kind of saying to himself that a podium would be great for the team if they can get up there in front of one of the McLarens or even Max Verstappen. That's kind of what they're aiming for. The win, maybe just a little bit further away from them. But to be fair, they kind of said the same thing in places like Belgium where they then won, in places like Austria where the door opened for them to win. So George Russell's definitely in the talk. Sergio Perez, much, much better from the Mexican. Really, really impressive from him. Obviously, has had the summer break, has bounced back a little bit, got through into Q3, qualified ahead of the Ferraris, ahead of Lewis Hamilton, doing a much better job. I think Sergio Perez should really finish in the top 4, considering where that Red Bull car seems to be this weekend, and should hopefully get in front of George Russell. But that battle between the two could be very interesting. Charles Leclerc, as ever, in the Ferrari. Very difficult to judge where they're going to be, but I think Charles Leclerc is clicking with this track this weekend. Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll, great to see Aston Martin back where they really should be, getting both cars into Q3, getting points. I think if they can finish 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, it's absolutely brilliant for them. Can they keep the likes of Carlos Sainz behind when he's so close? Maybe not, but I feel like they should still finish ahead of Pierre Gasly. And Aston Martin kind of want to stamp their authority once again as that 5th fastest team, because it started to drift away from them towards the middle of the first half of the season. But actually, so the last 3-4 races before the summer break, they were back to being that 5th fastest team more often than not. Now they need to kind of stamp that in the second half of the season, use that to build into next season, and maybe get the Aston Martin back to where it was at the beginning of 2023, where we were talking about it as a possible contender for at least podium places and solid point scoring finishes. I don't think they'll be overly happy that, you know, a year ago they would have been looking at 5th or 6th place, and now they're looking at, you know, 8th, 9th, 10th place more often than not. Outside of that, Pierre Gasly getting the Alpine into the top 10. Alpine does seem to be moving in a better direction, at least compared to the beginning of the year, but still a long way to go with Alpine. Obviously, under Oliver Oakes, new management again at Alpine. We'll see how that kind of plays out. Jack Doohan confirmed for next year as well. We'll see how much time he gets in the Alpine car ahead of Esteban Ocon, who's leaving for Haas. But Gasly, 9th place, good start for him. Carlos Sainz will want to make up positions. Really, really tough qualifying for the Spaniard yesterday. Didn't make it through into Q3, and he'll be disappointed because obviously he's only got 10 races left in a Ferrari car. He is confirmed to Williams next season, but he'll want to prove to Ferrari, you know, that they made a mistake maybe of keeping hold of Charles Leclerc. I think he'll want to try and outdo Charles Leclerc over these last 10 races. I think it's going to be really, really tough because obviously the car is going to be moving towards a Charles Leclerc direction more so than Carlos Sainz, and they will definitely favour Charles Leclerc over Carlos Sainz for these final 10 races, but we'll have to wait and see. Yuki Tsunoda and Nico Hülkenberg, of course, always in the mix. 11th, 12th place. Does feel like one of those two finishes 11th place more often than not. I know Nico Hülkenberg finished 11th like 7 or 8 times in the first half of the season. He's always in there. Daniel Ricciardo in 13th place as well. Lewis Hamilton down in 14th. Obviously, a 3-place penalty that gains a position because Alex Albon dropped as well. So Lewis Hamilton down in 14th and kind of saying to him that he thinks, anyway, that this weekend is already over for him. I did also look at the telemetry for Lewis Hamilton's car just to, again, see where he really fell off. And it's kind of similar to Max Verstappen in one way or another. It just feels like maybe Lewis Hamilton's car was set up with a little bit more downforce. They were maybe expecting a little bit of rain, which was, you know, on the cards, as rained on and off throughout the weekend. And maybe they just set it up because it's got that similar kind of vibe where if you look, say, here, similar to what we had with Max Verstappen, just carrying a lot more speed through turn 7. So just having that little bit more downforce. And again, it was that final sector that cost Lewis Hamilton. You look at here, sort of through turn 10, as they come up towards turn 10, you can see actually Carlos Sainz at turn 10 is the driver who was the slowest of the 3 here. Fernando Alonso, Carlos Sainz and Lewis Hamilton in Q2. And this was sort of for that final place in the Q3 battle. Lewis Hamilton actually matching Fernando Alonso. And then it was that final sector, possibly just not having the drive off of turn 11, 12 to turn 13. And you can see Carlos Sainz actually has the highest top speed of anybody through all of those sections. Lewis Hamilton carrying more speed through turn 13, maybe just got in a little bit hot in comparison to what he wanted to, because you can see actually gained some time going into turn 13, but then that kind of drifted away from him and ended up being the tiniest margin slower than Carlos Sainz over the course of the lap, but missing out on Q3 by about a 10th of a second to Fernando Alonso's time. And that 10th, again, all came in that final sector, similar to what we saw and what I said with Max Verstappen against Lando Norris beforehand. So interesting to see whether or not Lewis Hamilton's car will be set up slightly differently, how he'll be able to do it, and whether or not he'll be able to catch someone like Fernando Alonso ahead of him, because it's a very long way to catching up with Fernando Alonso, who starts 7 positions ahead of him. Esteban Ocon starts in 15th place. Frustrating for the Alpine driver, but again, going to start to move towards Pierre Gasly being their main man. I mean, they were kind of anyway, but more so now that he's confirmed to Haas, now that there's only 10 races left to go, second half of the season, you can kind of see the development towards 2025 starting to come to fruition. And that's going to really cost Esteban Ocon in comparison to his teammate. And then Pierre Gasly actually last year was way quicker than Esteban Ocon through the second half of the season, although Ocon did also have a few races that were very, very unlucky. Bottas and Joe, Stake Sauber, not too much to say from them, unfortunately, yesterday. I was expecting more. It's a track that they generally do a little bit better on. I'm thinking last year, Valtteri Bottas did really, really well here. Zhou Guanyu also put in a pretty good stint in Zandvoort last year, but just didn't quite click for them yesterday. And then it was the Williamses. Logan Sargent didn't take part in qualifying yesterday after that shunt in free practice 3, but starts ahead of his teammate, Alex Albon, who was disqualified from qualifying overall. So obviously puts you at the back of the pack. And Kevin Magnussen then also starting at the back after swapping some components around inside of that Haas car and taking grid penalties. I think just realizing that this isn't going to be the circuit that Kevin Magnussen really clicks with. This isn't going to be the circuit where Haas define themselves in the Constructors' Championship, therefore giving themselves a little bit of space to work from moving into next season. Again, well, both of those Haas drivers leaving at the end of the year. So Haas in a very awkward situation where they're kind of just holding on to Kevin Magnussen and Nico Hülkenberg for now. Hülkenberg heading to Stake Sauber. And Kevin Magnussen, not confirmed for another Formula One seat yet. I don't think will be on the Formula One grid for next season, if you ask me. Is that everything? Where are we at? We've got 8 minutes to go. Oh, my goodness me, I've managed to get through it. And in record time. How are we all doing in the chat? Hope for Danny Rick points. Definitely on the cards, to be honest with you. I think starting from 13th place, a really solid position to start from, especially for those kind of midfieldy drivers. Just because he can kind of do the opposite to Yuki Tsunoda and pray that one tactic kind of goes one way or another. A little bit like George Russell did in Belgium, where he went just for the opposite strategy to the cars in front. Daniel Ricciardo can kind of do the same. Like, if the Aston Martins are going in one direction, if Gasly goes in one direction, if Tsunoda goes in one direction, I feel like Daniel Ricciardo is in that kind of perfect position to go the other way and hope that the race kind of comes to him in one way or another. Hoping for a Lando win. Me too, most definitely. Ferrari will be nowhere. Is a really tough track for Ferrari, but I feel like considering Charles Leclerc is starting in 6th place, if he can finish in 6th place, pretty good considering Ferrari were expecting almost nothing from this Grand Prix weekend. And Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz have both said that they're not really expecting too much in the first couple of races after the summer break. I imagine, there's going to be quite a few things change for Monza in front of the Tifosi, and maybe they'll be able to make up a little bit of ground to that top 3 a little bit over the course of the Monza weekend. Daniel got out of Q1, still got P13. Yeah, it's very true. Just shows, even if you get out of Q1, 16th is... You still want to be top of whatever qualifying session you do drop out of. Carlos Sainz, because he was in 11th, now up into the top 10. Because Daniel Ricciardo was in 16th, he gains on the likes of Hamilton. Whereas like Ocon, Bottas, Joe don't. So he gets that benefit of being that little bit further forward. Norris, please don't go for a horrible start and lose the pole to Mad Max. I think Lando Norris in recent starts has kind of overcompensated or overthought about it. I thought that straight away in Spain. I was like, you've just focused on Max Verstappen a little bit too much. You know what I mean? He's gone to the right-hand side. He's worried about Max Verstappen too much. Whereas actually, I feel like Lando Norris just needs to focus in on getting his start right. Not worried about everyone else. You're at the front of the pack. Don't try and, defend against Oscar, defend against Max. Just have your start and play it in the way that you want it to. What's the track behind me? That is Singapore. coming up very soon. What is it? 2-3 races time? So I think Oscar can win. Most definitely. Yeah, Oscar's been very, very quick this weekend. I think the qualifying lap wasn't what he wanted, but I could definitely see Oscar Piastri closing in. I mean, I'd love Oscar Piastri to be in second place by the time we get to turn 1, to be honest with you. Both of the McLarens 1-2 would be phenomenal, and then just disappear into the sunset from there. That would be preferable to me. Just very quickly, thank you also so much for all of the support recently as well. Hitting towards 100,000 subscribers. So if you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure that you are. And then secondly, I've got a little bit of a favor to ask from you. You might have seen it already. Over on the community tab this morning, I put a form available for you guys just to give me a little bit of feedback on the channel. As we head towards 100,000 subscribers, I want to start making a few changes here and there, getting myself prepared for the 2025 season. I know it feels like it's a little bit of a way away, but I want to make sure that I'm moving this channel in the direction that you guys want, because this channel doesn't exist without you guys' support. And you guys in particular that are here for the live streams every single weekend are kind of the more die-hard fans of the channel, if you will. I want your guys' feedback. So there's the top link in the description. You click that link, literally it will take you like 5 minutes to do so. Just loads of multiple choice, quick fire questions. Click that link, give me a little bit of feedback. And I think sort of 20 or 30 people have already completed it for me. If I can get sort of 50 or 60 responses, just to give me like a broad spectrum of people throughout the channel, that'd be amazing. And then that can start to move me in the correct direction for, first and foremost, this year, 100,000 subscriber specials, and then moving into next season and what you guys want this channel to be like. Like, for instance, today, did you enjoy when I did the little bit of drawing? This is brand new. Oh, I've closed it. This is brand new. The drawing that I did, right? And the analytics, that was investment in the channel. That was thanks to you guys. I was able to go out, buy some equipment and be able to do that analytics, right? And I want to know if you think that is worthwhile or not. So complete the survey, click the link in the description, do that bits and pieces. Whilst you're down there, hit like, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And let's get set up for the Grand Prix itself, shall we? Oh, I've forgotten to change the track map. Thank goodness we are here a little bit early. It's because the Belgian Grand Prix track is actually really squat. So Lando Norris's 4th career pole position, but can it be Lando's 2nd Formula One victory? I'm ready. I'm raring to go. It's going to be a fight, though, isn't it? It's going to be a very tight battle between Norris and Verstappen. Will he be able to hold on to the lead over 72 laps of the Zandvoort Grand Prix circuit? All of the top 10 starting on the fresh medium compound tyres. Yuki Tsunoda going against the grain, starting on a fresh set of soft compound tyres. Hülkenberg and Ricciardo also on mediums behind. Lewis Hamilton starts on a set of soft compound tyres as well. And so does his old teammate Valtteri Bottas, starts on the soft compound tyres. We'll have to wait and see if that plays into their favour or not. It's going to be interesting, actually, to see whether those soft compound tyres, how long they really hold up, especially on the heavy fuel with these banked corners. I'm not sure that the soft compound tyre is an amazing choice, but maybe they're trying to make up those positions really early on, kind of get yourself up into the top 10 straight off the bat in the case of Yuki Tsunoda, and then maybe hold out for a little bit of safety car or something to play in your favour. Kevin Magnussen and starting at the back of the pack, and the only driver on the hard compound tyre as well. Going very far indeed on that first stint, I would imagine. I love Zandvoort's back corner, so satisfying to watch, especially with the, have you seen the new gyro cameras that they've got on the cars as well? I thought that was very, very smooth and interesting. I like the fact that, well, it's kind of one thing or another. I really like the visor cams because you get to see how aggressive Formula One driving actually is, right? you get to see whether or not you would be able to do it. You see all the bumps that you have when you're driving a Formula One car, especially on a track like this. But then also the gyro cam gives you the complete opposite of that. It just shows you like the smooth nature of these Formula One drivers driving, and the fact that they are able to flow around these corners, and the gyroscopic being able to hold itself just shows you how banked the corners actually are, because the cars almost go sideways as they go round. Very, very cool indeed. I love the fact that Formula One are kind of moving in that direction and adding more and more detail to their camera work as we go through the season, and continuing to make that better and better. Let's have a little look then. We're going to get up there towards... Oh, I've made a mistake. Do that. Oh, McLaren have gone heavy. McLaren seeing that they've got the performance here. They think they can get a 1-2 finish, starting 1 and 3. The drivers are out on the formation lap. You can see Lando Norris just coming towards turn 11 there. Who are we all going for in the chat then? Come on, Lewis. Piastri might take it. What happened to Alex? Alex, unfortunately, disqualified from qualifying. Drops out of the top 10, all the way back to 19th place in his Williams car. Yeah, that was a tough one to take for Alex Albon. Really tough one to take. The underside of his car was wider than it is allowed to be within the regulations, or didn't fit within the volume allowed, I think, with the technical words. Lots of Max and Landos. Lewis is in the chat. A Bottas. Not sure Bottas is going to be the one lifting the trophy at the end of this, but you never know. Anything could happen in Formula One, especially if the rain does decide to rear its head in Zandvoort, as it has many, many times in the past. Lewis Hamilton on board with the Mercedes driver, starting in 14th place, just setting himself on the grid and getting himself into position. Hasn't started 14th very many times in his career as Lewis Hamilton. Thank you to all of the new recent subscribers. Pseudo, thank you. Raymond as well, or Rayan, sorry. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Final drivers taking their positions then. Logan Sargent slots into 18th. Alex Albon into 19th. And the green flag is waved at the back of the grid. 5 red lights. And we are going to get underway here in Zandvoort. Let's see how Lando Norris does. It's a poor start from Lando Norris. He's opened the door straight away for Max Verstappen to breeze into turn 1 ahead. And I'll tell you what, George Russell has also had a really good start. Both of the McLaren struggling. Piastri now drops behind Russell as well. It is Verstappen, Norris, Russell, Piastri, our top 4. Piastri tries to look up the inside of the Mercedes car, but can't this time around. And Lando Norris once again has lost out to Max Verstappen at the beginning of a Grand Prix. George Russell has jumped up into 3rd place. Charles Leclerc has done well to get in front of Sergio Perez. Pierre Gasly, with a stunning start in the Alpine, has jumped both of the Aston Martin cars. Nico Hülkenberg has also managed to get the better of Yuki Tsunoda. Hamilton is up into 13th. Daniel Ricciardo, a really poor start for him and his RB, is down to 15th place. Albon and Sargent have swapped positions, and Zhou Guanyu has also dropped behind as well. Yuki Tsunoda going for a move on Hülkenberg, and looks like Tsunoda's going to be able to get it, but then Hülkenberg moves back up the inside. Very, very tight indeed for 11th place for Nico Hülkenberg. Bottas and Hamilton also exchanging positions in 13th and 14th. Carlos Sainz has also been able to move up in front of Lance Stroll and get behind the fellow Spaniard in Fernando Alonso. Verstappen leads as we go into turn 1 of the 2nd lap of this Grand Prix. Russell in 2nd. Lando Norris in 2nd. George Russell up into the podium places. Oscar Piastri in 4th spot. Charles Leclerc holding on as well. Pierre Gasly under pressure from Fernando Alonso, but Pierre Gasly holding on to that position, using that banked corner to his advantage. Carlos Sainz in 9th. Lance Stroll in the final point scoring place. Lots of shuffling around inside of the top 10. Everybody who was on the inside line going into turn 1. Massive advantage, it seemed, because Verstappen gained a position, Russell gained a position, Leclerc gained a position. They were all on that side of the track, and they were able to gain that position up into turn 1. So maybe it isn't that great to actually qualify 1st, 3rd, or 5th here. Just opens the door. The inside line. Daniel Ricciardo having a little battle. And Lewis Hamilton. Oh, sorry, it's Yuki Tsunoda. And Lewis Hamilton going wheel to wheel. And Hamilton gets ahead up into 12th place. Yuki Tsunoda drops back down into 13th. Hamilton 2 positions away from getting up into the point scoring places already in this one. Ooh. And Valtteri Bottas going for a move on Yuki Tsunoda as well. Tsunoda having to be heavily defensive through these first few laps. Not what you'd expect considering he's on the softer compound tyre. Although Valtteri Bottas also on the soft compound tyre behind as well. Alex Albon is up into 17th place. He's putting pressure on Esteban Ocon, but not quite able to get past this time in the Williams car. Max Verstappen then leading the Grand Prix by 1.6 seconds already. The fastest lap of the Grand Prix going to Max Verstappen last time around as well. A 1:16.1 from the Dutchman. 0.03 of a second quicker than 2nd place Lando Norris. George Russell in 3rd place is 2.7 seconds off the Grand Prix leader and also outside of DRS range of Norris. Piastri, though, is within DRS range of George Russell, just half a second behind the Mercedes car. Then you've got Charles Leclerc in 5th, 1.1 seconds off Piastri. Piastri, therefore, the driver with DRS inside of the top 5. Then you look at Sergio Perez with the DRS open as well behind the Ferrari, but not able to make a move this time around. Both Piastri and Perez having lost a position at the beginning of the Grand Prix. It's now trapped in 4th and 6th place respectively. Pierre Gasly going very well indeed in that Alpine car. Great start from the Alpine, got himself up into 7th. And now keeping Fernando Alonso at arm's length. Although Fernando Alonso trying to use the top speed of that Aston Martin car to get ahead of the Alpine within half a second with DRS. Carlos Sainz in a little bit of a DRS train with Stroll and Hülkenberg, Hamilton all with DRS behind Pierre Gasly. So no real advantage for any of those cars. Yuki Tsunoda also within touching distance of Lewis Hamilton. It's then Valtteri Bottas a second and a half behind Yuki Tsunoda all the way down in 14th. So a little bit of a DRS train already happening there. Let's have a look then at Verstappen's pace. Again, pretty solid. And Verstappen 0.3 of a second quicker than Lando Norris that time around. Lando Norris 1.3 seconds off the back of Verstappen's car. Here comes Verstappen across the start-finish line again. See what the lap times are like. Verstappen losing a 10th or so to Lando Norris, but still keeping the McLaren outside of that second range. No DRS for him. Oscar Piastri still with DRS, but not an ability to go for the move. And actually, George Russell holding up Oscar Piastri a little bit now, meaning that Charles Leclerc and Sergio Perez are catching the back of this pack. It is Verstappen all on his own at the moment. Lando Norris then a second and a half behind. A little gap to then George Russell, just over a second and a half to him. Piastri, Leclerc, Perez now in a mini DRS train behind the Mercedes car. George holding on to that 3rd place position, but under a lot of pressure from a McLaren, a Ferrari, and a Red Bull behind the top 4 teams, all vying for that final podium place, with Verstappen and Norris already looking like a fairly solid 1 and 2 at this point in the Grand Prix. Yeah, it's big DRS train actually, isn't it? From Gasly down to Tsunoda. It's just not really helping you out and not really allowing anybody to have a proper go. You missed the Dutch national anthem. You might hear it again later on. Max Verstappen leading his home Grand Prix after 6 laps here. And Lando Norris. Oh, here's a replay of the start. Oh, little bit of wheel spin from Lando Norris. The reaction times between Verstappen and Norris absolutely identical, but Verstappen just able to get the rubber down in that Red Bull that little bit quicker. Up to 200 kilometers an hour, much faster than Lando Norris was. That's the tiniest little bit of wheel spin. 0.4 of a second was the difference. And that is what 0.4 of a second looks like in Formula One. Max Verstappen comfortably into turn 1 ahead of the papaya car. Here's Pierre Gasly's restart. This is the one I've wanted to watch. Pierre Gasly gets a great launch to the left-hand side of Lance Stroll, then also runs around the outside of Fernando Alonso, just holds on to that outside line, holds it. Oh, and then is on the inside line, of course, for then turn 4 as well. Very well done from Pierre Gasly. Just has to hold on to that outside line. Hold it. Oh, great move from Pierre Gasly there. George Russell on the inside. That was, oh, Charles Leclerc actually went around the outside. I assumed Charles Leclerc did the same as George Russell and ran around the inside to gain the position. But no. Oh, and Kevin Magnussen, a big lock up for the Haas. And the Haas then going through the gravel at turn 1. And Kevin Magnussen then dropping to the back of the pack where he started. Max Verstappen leading the race still at 116.1 from him last time around, a 10th of a second quicker than Norris. Ooh. Verstappen on the radio. Just need to make sure those tires don't go too far adrift. Little bit of managing the car already from Max Verstappen, supposedly over the radio. It is Max Verstappen's 200th Formula One Grand Prix. 2016, of course, his first victory in Formula One. He'd love to get another victory here in front of his home crowd once again. He's dominated the Dutch Grand Prix since its return to the calendar in 2021. Did feel like this time around it might be the opportunity for Lando Norris to cause a little bit of a stir. The Orange Army might be shouting for another orange driver instead of Verstappen, but Verstappen comfortably ahead at the beginning of this Grand Prix, gets himself up into turn 1 ahead of Lando Norris straight away and has looked fairly smooth since then. Norris 1.4 seconds adrift. George Russell just falling away a touch, 3 seconds nearly the gap between Norris and Russell. And then Russell with a little bit of a DRS train behind him beforehand. Piastri has dropped outside of the... Who are we racing? Do you think it's just Max? I think that is the case for Lando Norris at this point. Just answering the question for him. I don't think they need to worry too much about George Russell behind them. The pace of the Mercedes car just doesn't seem to quite be there. And Russell is falling away in comparison to Lando Norris and Verstappen. See on the onboard tracker there. It's quite tough to really judge because it's quite a small circuit around here. 72 laps, of course. You compare that to the 44 that we do in Belgium, almost double the amount of laps. That's because the track is so much shorter, and therefore the gap doesn't appear as quickly as maybe it does at other circuits. But we are now seeing Lando Norris 1.5 seconds behind George Russell, then another 3 seconds. That drops to sort of 4-5 seconds. You're then not really racing that car anymore. There's not too much to worry about with the car behind, unless there is a safety car or something goes awry for you in a pit stop. But you're assuming your pit stop buffer sort of 2-3 seconds. You're doing a 5-second pit stop. You're not really in the battle you want to be in anyway. Oh, here's a move from Carlos Sainz. Carlos Sainz has sort of slowly been making his way up through the field. Sainz up into 8th place. Now looking to catch the back of Pierre Gasly. Carlos Sainz looking at the rear end of the Frenchman. Not yet able to get past. Pierre Gasly still clambering on to that 7th place spot. Alonso and Stroll, though, working together in the Aston Martin to kind of keep Lewis Hamilton at bay, still in 11th. Hulkenberg and Tsunoda, the two behind, in 12th and 13th. Maybe most expectantly, those two on the fringe of, if something goes wrong, it'll be Hulkenberg and Tsunoda who jump at the opportunity to get themselves in the mix with those top 5 teams. Valtteri Bottas down in 14th on the soft compound tyre. Be interesting to see how long they decide to go on those soft tyres. I'm expecting sort of 25 laps maybe from the soft compound tyre runners. So Hamilton, Tsunoda, Bottas, those three likely to be the first 3 that come in. Here is Carlos Sainz then. Carlos Sainz up the inside of Pierre Gasly. Going to try and go into it. Gasly's trying to hang around the outside like he did at the beginning of the Grand Prix. Knows that if he can just keep himself on the inside. No, can't do it. Just that little bit better traction from Carlos Sainz. And Carlos Sainz slots himself into 7th position. 3.5 seconds off the back of Sergio Perez. Then sort of 5 seconds or so behind his teammate. It's not over and done with for Carlos Sainz. Definitely in the mix with Perez and Leclerc if he can get some solid lap times in. Ooh, Carlos Sainz leaving it a little bit late there with the overtaking maneuver. Was almost inside the Alpine car before he pulled over to the right-hand side of it. Had the inside line through turn 1. Gasly tried to hang it around the outside, but by the time they get to the banked corners at turn 3, Carlos Sainz had made that move stick. George Russell, the 116.3. So matching each other at the moment. The top 3 drivers, aren't they? Verstappen, Norris, Russell, all 116.3s. Piastri then dropped a couple of attempts behind. I think just frustrated behind George Russell at this moment in time is Oscar Piastri. 2.5 off the pace, maybe just holding onto his tyres a little bit. Might go for an undercut or an overcut on George Russell, depending on what the McLaren team find better. Charles Leclerc, 5th place right now for the Ferrari. Also within DRS range of Oscar Piastri. So Piastri's got to be just a little bit aware of the Ferrari behind. We've seen Carlos Sainz getting some moves done. The straight line speed of Carlos Sainz seemed to be pretty swift. Charles Leclerc's running a similar setup. Piastri just needs to be a little bit wary. Sergio Perez behind in 6th place outside of DRS range in the Red Bull as we are right now. The softs are quicker. So the soft compound tyre, yeah, generally is the faster compound tyre. So that's why, like, for instance, in qualifying, you always see the cars go out for their final laps on the soft compound tyre. That is the tyre which offers you the most grip, but it does also degrade a little bit quicker than the other tyres as well. That's why you don't normally see the soft compound tyre used during the races, to be honest. The soft compound tyre is very much kind of a qualifying tyre, and a lot of the time you'll see a mixture of mediums and hards throughout the actual races themselves. I guess it's there as a little bit of a gamble. Hamilton, Tsunoda, Bottas, they're using the soft compound tyre here because of that extra grip, because it can give you that little extra push, if you will, especially towards the beginning of the race when everyone's very, very close. If you use that little bit of extra grip right at the beginning of the race and you're able to make up some positions, the soft compound tyre can go in your favour. But you'd imagine the soft compound tyre also is going to degrade that little bit faster. And when it does fall off a cliff, you lose a lot of that benefit that you get from it to begin with. Alex Albon has actually come in and made a stop for Williams. He goes to the back of the pack. A fresh set of hard compound tyres onto the Williams car. Lando is catching up. Lando is closing within that second range now. I think it's always been the case that towards the end of a stint, the McLaren car does hold onto its tyres that little bit better. And I think Lando Norris just been biding his time a touch here. As I said before the Grand Prix, when I was analysing the qualifying lap times between Verstappen and Norris, it did feel like Verstappen is... Like, if Verstappen got the lead of the race, as I said before, the top line speed of the McLaren car does seem to be that little bit better. Max Verstappen also struggling for a little bit of grip, he's saying over the radio. So I don't think this is over by any stretch of the imagination. But I think Lando Norris is going to have to use those kind of final parts of each stint to his favour. Also, generally speaking, the McLaren car has been much, much quicker on the medium tyre compared to the hard. The general strategy here is to go moderately long on the medium tyre in the first stint and then swap onto a set of hard compound tyres. If that's the case, it does feel like Lando Norris kind of needs to get the position made and get the move done on Max Verstappen during the medium stint rather than during the hard stint, because the hard compound tyre not quite as effective on the McLaren car. That's just my take on things. George Russell then also running 3.7 seconds off the back of Lando Norris, still inside of the podium positions. Hülkenberg and Tsunoda both come into the pits together. So Hülkenberg and Tsunoda dropping into the pit lane, deciding to get some fresh tyres onto their car. Just looking where Alex Albon is. Is Alex Albon going to be able to get the undercut on Hülkenberg and Tsunoda? No, but very close to being able to do so. Albon's not too far behind Hülkenberg and Tsunoda. The undercut here may be looking quite strong. Alex Albon definitely gained quite a substantial amount of time there by swapping onto the hard compound tyre early and just having a little bit of clean air to himself. Max Verstappen seems to have stepped on the gas pedal a little bit since Lando Norris is close to within a second, but Lando Norris still right on the edge of running inside of that second, getting that DRS behind the Red Bull car. George Russell then has kind of dropped barely adrift of that. Piastri really seems to be struggling behind George Russell at this point. 1.3 seconds the gap between Piastri and Russell, and Piastri not really closing it. In fact, worried a little bit more about what's going on behind him. Charles Leclerc inside DRS range to the McLaren and trying to gain the position on the young Australian driver. Sergio Perez then 1.7 seconds adrift. Carlos Sainz has kind of settled into his own race, it feels. Instead of trying to burn through these tyres and catch up to the guys in front, maybe going to try and do that in strategy rather than just getting them on track. Carlos Sainz holding onto his tyres a little bit better, staying sort of 4 seconds adrift of Sergio Perez, going for something a little bit different. Pierre Gasly still in 8th place, but Lewis Hamilton now the man behind him in 9th. Alonso and Stroll have finally succumbed to Lewis Hamilton in the Mercedes. Hamilton on the soft compound tyre. Gonna have to do something a little bit special. Here's Lando Norris though. Lando Norris 5/10 off the back of Max Verstappen and starting to turn up the heat now. Lando Norris with a 1:15.6 last time around, gaining massively on Max Verstappen in every single sector. Verstappen on the radio. Tyres are just numb. They don't grip. Verstappen not very happy at all with his Red Bull car at this moment in time. I just feel like that Lando Norris does just fall away a little bit though through that middle sector and then comes back to life again, similar to what we saw in qualifying. I do think that middle sector does roll towards the Red Bull a little bit. Those fast sweeping corners just seem to be better set up in the Red Bull car. But then it's this final sector here. And of course, the DRS for Lando Norris. He's charging down the main straight. down towards turn 1. Lando Norris goes up the inside. Max Verstappen's going to try and hang it around the outside, but Lando Norris takes the lead of the race. Come on, Lando. Lando Norris up into P1 once again. It took him 18 laps, but he's back to where he started. And now Max Verstappen is the man that needs to find some lap time. Lando Norris up into P1 and already 6 tenths ahead of Verstappen. Can Verstappen bite back, though? Through this middle sector, I feel like Verstappen will close the gap and still will be within DRS range come the final sector. Here's the replay of the overtake from Lando Norris. DRS open, gets underneath the rear wing of the Red Bull, peels to the right-hand side of the track, up the inside of turn 1. Max Verstappen tries to hang it around the outside. A little squirm from Verstappen. He maybe holds on a little bit too long, but Lando Norris able to make sure he gets that move done. Here we go then. Verstappen and Norris just coming around turn 11 and 12 together through to turn 13. Is Verstappen going to mount a little bit of a fight back straight away? DRS open for Verstappen. He's about 5 tenths adrift as they get to the bottom of turn 1. Oscar Piastri still under pressure from Leclerc. Okay, Lando Norris fairly happy with his tyres right now. So, still sticking with plan A. Wow, Lando saying that even if Max Verstappen goes for the undercut, should be okay. Max Verstappen, just through this middle sector, Verstappen's going to be able to close in enough that I feel like he's always going to have that DRS. And therefore, Lando Norris is always going to have to be just a little bit wary. And it's not over and done with. As I said before this Grand Prix started, I do feel like the difference in pace and the difference in ability right now between Verstappen and Norris at this Grand Prix weekend is so marginal. There's going to be a big fight. And whoever comes out on top is going to deserve it. Lando Norris on top right now, but Verstappen not letting him disappear up the road by any means. Within 4 tenths of a second as they go through turn 1. Both of them has just turned it on a little bit. I think this is the difference, right, between Lando and Verstappen and the rest right now. You see George Russell just falling away from the top 2. Norris and Verstappen have just been able to find another gear. Russell not able to do so just yet. Now 5 seconds off the front 2. Piastri then another 1.5 seconds behind. Leclerc is in 5th place. Sergio Perez in 6th. 7th place is Carlos Sainz. Pierre Gasly in 8th. Lewis Hamilton is up into 9th. Fernando Alonso down into 10th place in the Aston Martin car. So almost the top 8 as you would expect. Pierre Gasly maybe the unexpected driver inside of that top 10 with Lance Stroll missing out because of it. It does feel like Lewis Hamilton is going to move ahead of Pierre Gasly fairly swiftly, and we're going to have our top 4 teams back into the top 8 positions as we generally expect on a generic Grand Prix weekend. That's what it's going to be. Here comes Max Verstappen once again, and is actually outside of DRS range this time around. Did he? Or did he have DRS? No. No, he did not. We were on board with him, but he did not have DRS, was not within that range. Lewis Hamilton, though, does indeed have DRS. And let's see if Lewis Hamilton is able to get past Pierre Gasly. He sived his way through the field. Started in 14th place, Lewis Hamilton. And now just trying to get himself up into that top 8. Lando Norris on the radio. Lando Norris, just a little question of the brakes. No, possibly just a little bit of wind gusting McLaren off course a touch. Lando Norris just making sure that everything is fine on the brakes. Confirmation, all good. Lando Norris now 1.7 seconds ahead of Verstappen. Yeah, Gasly is the man under pressure from Lewis Hamilton. We're on board with Hamilton right now. seeing if the British driver can close in. Of course, won the British Grand Prix, won the Belgian Grand Prix before the summer break. Wants to end his career with Mercedes with a positive. And after a poor qualifying yesterday, is starting to make his way back to the positions where you'd expect him to be. Charles Leclerc is still really hounding Oscar Piastri, and Piastri having a really tough afternoon. Charles Leclerc just will not leave him alone. Isn't able to get past the McLaren. Does feel like the McLaren straight line speed advantage is too much. Even with DRS, Charles Leclerc not really getting within fighting distance, but just keeping Piastri on his toes constantly. Piastri having to think about what's happening in front and behind all the time. It's a real test for Oscar Piastri this weekend. Still very early on in his Formula One career, of course. If he can keep himself level-headed here, maybe even get himself back up into the podium places, it will be a very, very solid drive from him. Charles Leclerc, though, is not making it easy. Sergio Perez has dropped off a touch, 2.4 seconds behind. Carlos Sainz is actually closing in to the back of Sergio Perez. Was 4 seconds adrift, now only 3 seconds adrift of the Mexican driver. But then it is a big gap, 8 seconds to Pierre Gasly, just again showing the quality of those top 4 teams. And Charles Leclerc again trying to keep Oscar Piastri honest. And Oscar Piastri under pressure. Charles Leclerc much closer this time around and actually within touching distance now of Oscar Piastri's car. Leclerc maybe just getting the final bit out of these medium compound tyres and really going for it. Lewis Hamilton is a replay. Oh, has he managed to get past Pierre Gasly? No, not this time around. Up the inside of Pierre Gasly, but Gasly just hangs it around the outside and knows that he can position himself well for turn 2 and turn 3. Gasly doing the defensive job. Is there even a little touch between the two? No. Very, very close driving between the two of them, though. Gasly holds on to that 8th position ahead of Hamilton. Fernando Alonso, the final point scoring place currently on the grid. Lance Stroll was running 11th. Daniel Ricciardo in 12th. Kevin Magnussen 13th. Esteban Ocon 14th. And then you get into the cars who have already pitted. Hülkenberg, Tsunoda, Albon, Bottas, Sargent and Zhou have all already come in for their first pit stop. Alex Albon very early with his first pit stop onto the hard compound tyres. We'll see how that plays out for them throughout the Grand Prix. Possibly a 2-stop, well, definitely a 2-stop strategy for those drivers. Max Verstappen just can't seem to find the pace inside of that Red Bull car, and we have seen Lando Norris disappear up the road a touch. Hamilton has finally given up on trying to overtake Pierre Gasly and instead has decided to come in and swap those soft compound tyres. Hamilton into the pits then. It'd be interesting to see where he comes back out again. Obviously wants to come out ahead of Nico Hülkenberg if he can. No, Hamilton out behind Nico Hülkenberg and Yuki Tsunoda. That is not where you want to be if you're Lewis Hamilton. Because Hülkenberg and Tsunoda have already pitted, so you've got to get past them again. Not very nice at all for Lewis Hamilton. And again, that's what you get for qualifying in 14th place. Getting that 3-place penalty becomes a very difficult afternoon for you. The McLaren pit team are out as well. They're just holding because Charles Leclerc is coming in and deciding to swap his tyres in the Ferrari. Charles Leclerc then, maybe trying to undercut Oscar Piastri here. Goes onto the hard compound tyre. Will come out in a nice bit of space. I think he's going to come out just behind Pierre Gasly by my estimations. I know, there's Fernando Alonso. I was a little bit off, actually. He's going to come out behind the Aston Martins, isn't he? Charles Leclerc is going to come out behind Alonso in between the two Aston Martin cars. Charles Leclerc then with the hammer down and hoping that the rest of the cars around him will move out of the way. Lewis Hamilton is starting his move back through the field. He's just gotten past Yuki Tsunoda. Now 2.5 seconds to Nico Hulkenberg ahead. Hamilton once again making up those positions through the midfield. Having to get there. And here is Mercedes out once again. Surely George Russell is the man coming in. And George Russell is indeed into the pit lane. That releases Oscar Piastri then. So we finally get to see whether or not Oscar Piastri was just struggling in the dirty air a touch. It's not a great pit stop from George Russell. 3.4 second stop from the Mercedes team. George Russell trying to cover Charles Leclerc, but Charles Leclerc is right there. And Charles Leclerc coming around and ahead. Charles Leclerc's got himself up in front of George Russell. Russell down into 9th place now in the undercut. Really seeming to be the play here. Charles Leclerc now with an opportunity at a podium place. If he can also get in front of Oscar Piastri with this undercut. Piastri on the radio. Plan A target +5. Wow. Let's see. Can Oscar Piastri do it then? Oscar Piastri given the go-ahead. Needs to do it right now. You look at Oscar Piastri, 12 seconds off the lead. Leclerc, 32 seconds. 20 seconds for a pit stop. It's going to be very close indeed. At this moment in time, I'd kind of back Leclerc, to be honest with you. He's absolutely flying. Fernando Alonso has just been dispatched by George Russell. And George Russell now back behind Charles Leclerc. The undercut really playing into their advantage. Charles Leclerc with DRS making his way past Fernando Alonso. Russell's done the same. Charles Leclerc now 3.5 seconds behind Gasly. Some lovely clean air in that Ferrari car. It was that slow stop from Russell. Just cost him a touch. And there's Lewis Hamilton just getting past Esteban Ocon. So Hamilton back up into 14th place. He's making moves. George Russell needs to do the same now if he's going to get back up into that podium position that he found himself in for the first stint. Down in 8th now. But of course, Gasly, Sainz, Perez, Piastri, Verstappen and Norris all yet to have pitted. Alonso and Stroll also haven't pitted yet either. Ricciardo, Magnussen also need to come in for a stop. Max Verstappen, box. And to be fair, Max Verstappen's lap times have fallen off a cliff. There's a reason I haven't really touched upon it. I thought he was going to be able to hold on to the back of Lando Norris. He really has not. Max Verstappen 6 seconds adrift of Lando Norris by the end of that stint. Lando Norris now catching up to the back markers. Zhou Guanyu been overtaken by Lando Norris. George Russell, very quick indeed. Fastest lap from George Russell and 5 tenths quicker than Charles Leclerc. So Russell wanting that position back sooner rather than later and trying to get himself within a second of the Ferrari ahead. Max Verstappen has come out in 5th spot, so luckily won't be in that mix with Leclerc and Russell. Also got himself a nice little bit of gap to Carlos Sainz. McLaren coming in. Surely this is Lando Norris then. Yes, Lando Norris decides to pit on lap 28 of this Grand Prix. He's leading it and leading it fairly comfortably. Just needs to be a solid stop from the McLaren team. Medium tyres off, hard compound tyres on. It's a little bit slower the front left, but it's not slow enough to really cause him any problems. Lando Norris is going to drop behind. There's Sergio Perez going past, Carlos Sainz going past as well. But Max Verstappen only just coming onto the pit straight as Lando Norris leaves the pits. And yeah, Lando Norris through turn 1 and ahead of Verstappen still by a considerable chunk as well. Verstappen 8.5 seconds adrift. That drops to 5 and a bit seconds. So yeah, 5 seconds. The gap between Norris and Verstappen. Oscar Piastri then is the man I've got my eye on. needs to put in some absolutely ridiculous lap times if he's going to keep himself ahead of Charles Leclerc. But Charles Leclerc currently going quicker. I think Oscar Piastri is in a little bit of trouble here. Found himself under a lot of pressure from Charles Leclerc in that first stint, and now could drop behind Charles Leclerc quite comfortably. Charles Leclerc has just actually dispatched Gasly. Those two good friends off track, but Leclerc taking the position from Gasly on track. Also a replay of Lewis Hamilton getting the job done on Nico Hülkenberg. Hamilton in 13th place now. Actually, everyone ahead of Lewis Hamilton has yet to have stopped. George Russell now also gets in front of Gasly. So Gasly, Alonso, Stroll, Ricciardo, Magnussen all need to stop. Therefore, Lewis Hamilton will gain those positions. In and around his teammate. Ooh, Sergio Perez with a 4.4 seconds stop. That is an ugly stop from Sergio Perez. We watch Lewis Hamilton now fly by. Kevin Magnussen this time, and yep, gotten rid of. Daniel Ricciardo, I think, also came into the pits. Yeah. So Hamilton now up into 11th spot as those drivers ahead of him, as I said, needed to come into the pits. Kevin Magnussen still hasn't pitted yet, though. Daniel Ricciardo has finally decided to give up on those medium compound tyres. Going to put him very far adrift, unfortunately, for Daniel Ricciardo in this one. So Piastri with a 1:16 dead. Leclerc with a 1:15.5. Carlos Sainz coming in, box for Carlos Sainz. Went a little bit longer on those medium tyres than maybe he would have wanted to, but isn't in much of a battle. Having started 10th place and kind of losing out a little bit at the beginning of the Grand Prix, Carlos Sainz not really battling with these other cars in and around sort of Leclerc, Russell, is he? Let's see where Carlos Sainz comes out. Sergio Perez is coming by. Alonso's coming by. You know what? He's going to be within touching distance of Sergio Perez because of that slow stop from Sergio Perez. Could be a little battle here between Carlos Sainz and Sergio Perez. Lando Norris absolutely flying on those new tyres, though. 1:14.5. Verstappen only a 1:14.7. I think that's 1.5 seconds quicker than Oscar Piastri right now. Lando Norris even catching back up to his teammate. Oscar Piastri is going to find himself, I think, here in 5th place once he comes into pit. McLaren kind of leaving him out a little bit to death. Yeah, McLaren do seem to have messed up Oscar Piastri's strategy. I agree with the chat there. Ooh. Carlos Sainz gaining that DRS from Fernando Alonso. Alonso comes into the pits and Carlos Sainz able to get a little bit of a slingshot gain on Sergio Perez. And Carlos Sainz now 1.5 seconds off the back of the Red Bull. Aston Martin finally pit with Alonso. And unfortunately for them, it's a bit miserable. They've just gone way too long, in my opinion, on that medium compound tyre stint. And Alonso's going to come out nowhere near the top 10. He's behind Alex Albon. You'd assume Alex Albon's going to go for a 2-stop strategy, but even so, not very fun at all from Fernando Alonso. No, he's actually dropped behind Valtteri Bottas as well. Fernando Alonso down into 15th, Lance Stroll 16th, and some lap times needed, I would say, for Fernando Alonso right now in his Aston Martin. Lando Norris, fastest lap of the race once again, a 1:14.3, then does a 1:14.4. The next lap again, Oscar Piastri now nearly 2 seconds adrift of his teammate every single lap. Oscar is putting those tyres to work. I mean, Oscar is just absolutely ruined those tyres. And McLaren have left him out to dry, unfortunately. Charles Leclerc's going a second quicker than him. Russell's a second quicker than him. Gasly is finally coming to the pits for Alpine. I'm worried that Gasly has also left it way too late. Hulkenberg, Magnussen now making their way past Pierre Gasly. Yuki Tsunoda's come in for his second stop. Albon ahead of the Alpine as well now. Alonso and Stroll are the ones to keep an eye on, though. Gasly desperately wants to stay ahead of the Aston Martins. And actually is just about going to be able to, isn't he? Yeah, Gasly ahead of Fernando Alonso. Alonso losing a little bit of time maybe behind Valtteri Bottas, the reason for that. And Oscar Piastri is finally pitting. And it's going to be hard for Oscar Piastri. This is going to have much fresher tyres, yes. He's going to be behind maybe even Perez. No, he should get out between Russell and Perez, hopefully. 2.4 second stop's a good one from Oscar Piastri. There goes Charles Leclerc. So Leclerc comfortably ahead. There goes George Russell as well. And yeah, Piastri out in 5th place. Lost out there massively. Well, Charles Leclerc has been the huge winner there. Leclerc jumping in front of both Russell and Piastri. So Charles Leclerc jumping up into the podium places after the pit stops through just going that little bit earlier. I mean, he was only a lap earlier than George Russell, already able to jump in front. Ooh. Yeah, Gasly. Ooh. Got going there, nearly smacked into a mechanic's hands. But Gasly trying to get back underway once again, needs to get in there. Knew he needed to get out in front of Fernando Alonso, luckily did so. Here's Lando Norris, our race leader, as we head towards the halfway mark of this Grand Prix. He's 7.5 seconds ahead of Max Verstappen, and Lando Norris showing that the McLaren really is the dominant car here this weekend. Once he's in clean air, since he's been able to get into clean air, he's been much, much faster than Max Verstappen's Red Bull. Charles Leclerc is the man who really gained in those pit stops, up into 3rd spot, having started 6th. Russell down into 4th. Piastri into 5th. Sergio Perez still holding on in 6th place. Carlos Sainz not really able to close in as much as I thought he was going to be able to. Carlos Sainz running around in 7th. Lewis Hamilton finally back up into 8th place, has been able to dispatch all those midfield cars once again. Oh, Gasly's incident has been noted. An unsafe release possibly coming the way of the French driver, who's currently in 12th. Hulkenberg, Magnussen and Albon have all done 20 plus laps. I mean, Magnussen's done 34 laps on those hard compound tyres. Of course, started on those hard compound tyres. The swap for Magnussen will be on some mediums towards the end. That'll be interesting to see what Kevin Magnussen can do from that position. Of course, he'll have quite a lot to do, though. Seeing he's going to drop, what, 20 seconds back or so. So he's going to be in the mix, actually, as Kevin Magnussen on those medium compound tyres at the end of the Grand Prix. Interesting to see, as long as he can keep up fairly decent pace for now. I mean, he is in the 117s, so maybe sooner rather than later for Kevin Magnussen, but only halfway through the Grand Prix as we stand. As we are halfway through, I'll remind everybody, if you could hit that like button, that'd be absolutely amazing. Hit the subscribe button as well. Everything that you can do to help out the channel. Maybe watch a video or two. There's a link down in the description to my most recent video. Even if you don't, watch it, you just have it on in the background, give it a view, watch all the adverts. That'd be absolutely lovely. And also, down in the description this week as well, is a link to a little channel survey for you guys. And want to get your guys' feedback on the channel as we move towards 100,000 subscribers. What kind of things you guys would like to see from the channel moving forwards, and what kind of content you're most interested in, how I can make the channel as good for everybody as possible. It takes like 5 minutes. So if you want to click that link in the description, you can complete a little survey. Already got nearly 30 people that have completed the survey. Oh, sorry, no, 35 people that have completed the survey. If you click that link, hit the survey, and then we can just help me out that little bit more. Oscar Piastri has just set the fastest lap of the Grand Prix. Then here we go. Oscar Piastri, fresh hard compound tyres, a bee in his bonnet because he's lost out to Charles Leclerc. He's lost out to George Russell. Can he get that McLaren car back onto the podium places? He's 2.8 seconds adrift of George Russell. He was almost a second faster than George Russell last time around, though. His tyres are almost sort of 9 laps cleaner than George Russell ahead. It'll be very interesting indeed. Oscar Piastri not out of the fight for those podium places as of yet. Why is everyone on hards? Hards is generally the best race tyre here at the Dutch Grand Prix, to be honest with you. I was expecting the general strategy is to go one stop medium onto hards. We might see some of the earlier pit stops, sort of your Hulkenbergs, your Magnusens, your Albons, your Bottases probably come in for a second stop. But generally speaking, that's going to be it for pit stops. Lando pushing tyres. Max maybe can one stop. I mean, I feel like Norris and Verstappen are both on the same strategy, and Verstappen is already nearly 10 seconds adrift. And I, as a McLaren fan, am absolutely fine with that. James Vowles on the radio. Still a little bit frustrated, obviously. Had Alex Albon started in the top 10, would have been in a very different battle to the one he is in currently. Just gaining on Kevin Magnussen. He's a second or so behind the Dane. Almost up into the point scoring places, but you would assume that Albon is going to have to come in once more. Swap around those hard compound tyres because Alex Albon running in 11th has been on those hard tyres for 25 laps. Went very, very early in the pit stops. Do I reckon Oscar can get P2? Ugh, that's tough. P3? Yes. P2. It's a lot to ask, isn't it? It's got to gain another 4 seconds to get to Leclerc, then get past Leclerc. Well, he's still got to get past Russell first. Got to get past Russell. Then he's got to gain 4 seconds to get to Leclerc. Got to get past Leclerc. Then he's got to gain another 5.5 seconds to get to Verstappen. Ooh, and Lance Stroll smacked with a 5-second time penalty for speeding in the pit lane. And that's Lance Stroll's possibility of points pretty much down the drain there with that 5-second penalty. Why is no one talking about Haas in the top 10? Because both of them are going to have to stop. So they're not really in the top 10. They are both going to have to pit once again. Unless Nico Hulkenberg is going for an absolutely, like, ridiculous stint on those hard compound tyres. Oh, here comes Oscar Piastri then. Oscar Piastri making the move on George Russell. Russell can do nothing about it. And Piastri, there you go, gets in front of George Russell. So here you go then. 33 laps left to go. 4 seconds the gap to Leclerc. 6 seconds then the gap to Verstappen. It's not out of the realms of possibility that Piastri does it. But as a McLaren fan, I feel like I can't say that it's a definite yes. But McLaren 1-2 is definitely on the cards. Alex Albon fighting. Oh my God, it's an absolute melee of cars. Hulkenberg, Albon, Magnussen, Gasly and Alonso all fighting with one another. What an incredible move. Gasly trying to get out in front. Does indeed. Gasly gets the position on Albon. Albon up into 11th. Alonso and Stroll down into 12th and 13th. Real chaos there between the cars in the midfield. Hulkenberg is in 9th. Gasly then up into 10th. So Gasly now in the point scoring places as Albon, Alonso and Stroll all got released. Kevin Magnussen dropped down massively. Crazy. Carlos Sainz is actually the fastest man out on track. A 1:14.1 from Carlos Sainz. And the Ferrari now catching up to the back of the Red Bull. I thought Carlos Sainz would be within striking distance of Sergio Perez even a little bit earlier than this. But maybe it's just let the tyres bed in a touch. And now is going for the overtake on Sergio Perez, biding his time. The Spaniard. Here comes Fernando Alonso on Alex Albon, and Fernando Alonso gets the position done. Alonso back up into 11th place. Lance Stroll behind in 13th. Daniel Ricciardo has also just been able to get in front of Kevin Magnussen as Magnussen finally comes into the pits. And Magnussen is going to tumble down the order towards the bottom. Oh no, Zhou Guanyu is still quite far adrift. So Kevin Magnussen, yeah, is going to be 19th once he takes that spot. Goodness me. Albon, not very happy at all. Albon trying to get around the outside of Kevin Magnussen. Magnussen then also caught up by everybody. Alpine trying to go around the outside. Gasly did really well there, actually. Gasly just hanging it around the outside of turn 1. He's done that at the beginning of the race and then done it again as Gasly. Working for him. Got himself up into the top of that run. Alonso in 11th. Albon 12th. Stroll 13th. Then Daniel Ricciardo, second and a half adrift of that little pack. 10 seconds ticks over now. The lead by Lando Norris on Max Verstappen. And another 6.5 seconds to Charles Leclerc in third. Oscar Piastri is the man to keep an eye on right now. Absolutely rattling around on those slightly fresher hard compound tyres. Catching up to Charles Leclerc pretty quickly. Have a little look at where Piastri is in comparison. Yeah, Piastri closing in on Charles Leclerc very swiftly, to be honest. Have a little look at the race trace. Have a little gander. So, George Russell fallen adrift of Oscar Piastri. Fair. Where's Oscar Piastri to Charles Leclerc? Yeah, you see this red and orange line converging fairly swiftly. So the orange line at the top, obviously Lando Norris. The second line down, Max Verstappen. That third line is Charles Leclerc. The fourth line on the right-hand side now is Oscar Piastri. And you can see that is just closing in to the Ferrari very, very swiftly indeed. It's going to be close. Piastri's going to get there within the next few laps. Then, can he catch Max Verstappen? The orange line is closing in on Max Verstappen, but going to be able to close in that much. Especially if Max Verstappen's holding on to his tyres. Might be able to right towards the end of the race. We might be looking at a Piastri battle with Verstappen for second. Everyone else has kind of settled into position now for the remaining parts of the Grand Prix. Thank you for subscribing, Spy Manny 24. Please, Miami podium. Yeah, I could see that. Looking very Miami-ish, Miami-esque at this moment in time. McLaren to take the lead in the constructors. I mean, again, Verstappen is still in second place right now. And Perez isn't that far off. You know, Perez is in 6th. Okay, it's probably going to end up being 7th because Carlos Sainz, in fact, Carlos Sainz might make the move now. Carlos Sainz trying to go around the outside of Sergio Perez into turn one. Oh, and almost contact between the two. Carlos Sainz, the door closed by Sergio Perez pretty abruptly. Oof. Please say my comment. Carlos needs to win. Unlikely today. I think there's other opportunities for Carlos Sainz to win, though. Singapore, of course. Very, very strong there. And by then, Ferrari might have sorted out their kind of second upgrade package as well. There's definitely opportunities, I feel like, for Ferrari to kind of close the gap that they had before the summer break. Lando Norris. Gap to Verstappen is 10 seconds. Under safety car, I think we would swap for mediums and then you would overtake him. Confidence. I like it. I very much like it indeed. McLaren going for it, getting their ducks in order, even if there is a safety car. And there might be a safety car because of these two. Carlos Sainz goes for the move on turn one again, tries to go around the outside of Perez. But once again, the Mexican closes the door. And Carlos Sainz has to settle for 7th place at the moment. Oscar Piastri is also now within half a second of Charles Leclerc. So both of the Ferraris making moves. Unfortunately, Charles Leclerc looking like he's going backwards. Carlos Sainz trying to move up into 6th position. Lewis Hamilton also up into the top 8. So it's those top 4 teams as you would expect. But Hamilton 5.5 seconds, nearly 6 seconds adrift of Carlos Sainz. Hulkenberg and Gasly, the two other drivers in the top 10. I don't know if Hulkenberg is going to be able to go to the end on those tyres, though. He's already done 31 laps on those hard compound tyres. So Gasly still looking the best driver outside of the top 4 teams. Fernando Alonso likely to slot into 10th place. Of course, Lance Stroll with a 5-second penalty to his name as well. Oscar Piastri has a little look at Charles Leclerc. Doesn't get the job done. Carlos Sainz, 3rd time's the charm, goes around the outside of turn 1, breaks that little bit later, and finally gets the move done. The Spaniard up into 6th place, and Sergio Perez has to settle for finally falling behind Carlos Sainz, who's knocking on the door, and eventually, 3rd time, managed to get the move done. So Carlos Sainz up into 6th place, and 2.8 seconds the gap to George Russell. Carlos Sainz's race might not be over here. Yeah, was going a little bit slower than George Russell in the last couple of laps, but that was mainly because of the battle with Sergio Perez. Let's see if Carlos Sainz can get himself back up into those quick lap times. Oscar Piastri also being held up a touch by Charles Leclerc. If we're looking for a McLaren 1-2, Piastri needs to get that job done fairly swiftly. A 6-second gap to Max Verstappen in 2nd place. I'm assuming Verstappen's probably just holding on to his tyres a little bit more at this point. Lando Norris still top of the tree. Now 12.8 seconds the gap to 2nd place. 1,194 watching, 289 likes. I mean, we usually get around about 400 likes on these streams. I'd be very, very disappointed if we can't get it up to 400 likes. That is the standard at this point. Shall I have a little look at how many Belgium got? Shall I set you guys a little bit of a target? Here we go. Content. Propaganda. Live streams. The Belgium Grand Prix managed to get 611 likes on it. That's only half as many as the people that are in here. So if half of you can hit the like button, you'll beat 611. The best performing stream so far this season, the British Grand Prix, got 935 likes. So 935 likes. 600 to match Belgium. 900 to be the most liked stream of the season so far. In fact, Monaco, 958. So 960 would make this the most live stream of the season. Bouncing back after the summer break with a bang. Hit that like button. See how we can do. Can we get ahead of Belgium before the summer break and maybe even get up to the level of the Monaco Grand Prix, with Lando Norris taking his second win in Formula One? As a McLaren fan, come on now. Lando Norris continuing to deliver. Oscar Piastri's pace just fell away a little bit in the last couple of laps, maybe because they're starting to catch up to the back of this weird pack. Lewis Hamilton has decided to come in for his second stop. Shouldn't be under pressure. No, he does get in front of Nico Hülkenberg. Nico Hülkenberg in ninth still. Press Nico Hülkenberg hasn't come in yet, but Hamilton has gone soft, hard, soft in terms of his stint strategy. 27 seconds the gap to Sergio Perez ahead, though. So Lewis Hamilton would have to do something incredible to be able to catch Sergio Perez. He'd need to gain over a second a lap in the last stint of this Grand Prix. Ooh. Red Bull. A little dummy move from the Red Bull team. Now that Lewis Hamilton has stopped, maybe Sergio Perez thinking about stopping for some soft compound tyres as well, but deciding against it, possibly. Charles Leclerc and Oscar Piastri just trying to make their way through some of these back markers. And unfortunately, that's kind of cost Oscar Piastri quite a little bit of time, because he hasn't been able to battle with Leclerc, because obviously Leclerc is also getting the DRS from these back markers in front. Come on, Tsunoda, Sargent, get yourselves out of the way, please. I'd like to see Oscar Piastri having a go at trying to catch the back of Charles Leclerc. Oh, Leclerc didn't get DRS on the back markers there. So Piastri did close in. Piastri's going to have a little run at Charles Leclerc. Not this time around, though, as finally Tsunoda gets out of the way. Come on, Sargent. Shift yourself over. Let us pass, would you? There we go. Finally, everybody is out of the way. We can get back to Charles Leclerc versus Oscar Piastri properly. Logan Sargent deciding now he's going to let us by. Lando Norris coming down. The start finish straight. Lando Norris now just the 14 seconds ahead of Max Verstappen. Charles Leclerc 6.3 seconds off the back of Verstappen. 20 laps left to go. Piastri gets the move done now. Still needs some ridiculous lap times to catch the back of Verstappen, wouldn't he? But not out of the realms of possibility. Safety car. I mean, it would definitely make a little bit of an interesting end. I think Lando Norris is almost getting to the point where he's got enough of a gap that he could probably pit under the safety car and still come out in the lead. Getting towards that point. At least it will do in the next few laps or so. Charles Leclerc third now. Still 6 seconds off Verstappen. Oscar Piastri outside of DRS range now. Straighting for Oscar Piastri. The McLaren team watch on. Hopeful Oscar Piastri will be able to get himself up into the podium places. Lando Norris is just making his way past the Aston Martin of Lance Stroll. Nico Hülkenberg is still out there, by the way. And he's still 6.7 seconds ahead of Gasly. And Gasly is lapping only 0.3 of a second quicker. Nico Hulkenberg might just go to the end here and see what he can do. Hulkenberg has been holding on to those hard compound tyres for so long at this point. Jeez Louise. Who do I think is going to win? I think that's over and done with. How are we doing on the likes? Did we surpass Belgium? Have we beaten the like target of Belgium? At least. At least. Got to get over 611, surely. Lewis Hamilton is putting in some lap times, to be fair. 1:14 dead from Hamilton. But again, it's just not over a second quicker than the guys in front. Just trying to see if there's any real battles to play out. I think it is literally just if Piastri can get in front of Leclerc, but Piastri's been really struggling since they managed to get through those back markers. Just hasn't looked to have the same pace. Charles Leclerc's just stepped it up a touch. George Russell's 5.5 seconds adrift. Carlos Sainz maybe closing in to George Russell. Be one to keep a little bit of an eye on. Sainz has done pretty well to close that gap. Now a second. So Carlos Sainz might be looking at a 5th place finish. The Ferrari going much better here. And maybe just finding a few things over the summer break. Sergio Perez then 7th. Feels like he's kind of locked in there. Hamilton 8th. Hulkenberg versus Gasly could be an interesting one towards the end. Gasly now starting to put in some lap times that are considerably quicker than Nico Hulkenberg, who's 0.8 of a second quicker than Hulkenberg on the last lap. George Russell, box. Interesting. Comes in for that 2-stop strategy. George Russell then is going to come out well ahead of his teammate Lewis Hamilton. Just trying to see where Sergio Perez is. Yeah, Sergio Perez is going to make his way past comfortably. Interesting. So Carlos Sainz and Sergio Perez now have track position on George Russell. Going to need a really, really quick final stint from George Russell. He is on the soft compound tyre now. If he can get ahead of Carlos Sainz, then fair enough. He's back to where he was. But George Russell, it's a used set of soft compound tyres as well for George Russell. It's going to get very interesting indeed. Let's put a little cat amongst the pigeons down at Mercedes with George Russell deciding to make that pit stop. Does mean that if anybody else does decide to pit, Sainz or Perez, possibly even Piastri, Russell might be able to get the undercut on them. Alex Albon comes in again for Williams. That's his 3rd stop, I think, Alex Albon. Or is that his 2nd? He goes super long on those hard compound tyres. Might be his 2nd stop, actually. But still, Alex Albon dropping all the way to the back. Ooh. George Russell is putting in some sectors. I'll tell you that for free. Let's see what his lap times are like once he gets a full lap without pit stopping. But that was some decent sectors. I mean, you'd expect it. He's got a lot of time to make up. As George Russell, 17 seconds the gap to Sainz and Perez. He's got to make up over a second a lap to even get back in front of Sergio Perez, but doesn't seem out of the realms of possibility. Piastri on the radio, not very happy about his tyres, but does think he will make it until the end on them. They are a little bit fresher. Maybe kind of given up on the hope of catching Verstappen. Verstappen has escaped to kind of 7 seconds ahead of Charles Leclerc, where it was down to sort of 5.5 beforehand. So now Piastri just looking at Charles Leclerc as his main rival. And maybe just knows with that tyre advantage, especially towards the end of the Grand Prix, we'll be able to jump the Ferrari. The Ferrari Charles Leclerc still putting in some good lap times, keeping Oscar Piastri at bay. This kind of battle has swapped around. It was in the first stint, it was Charles Leclerc putting Oscar Piastri under pressure constantly. Now it's Oscar Piastri putting Charles Leclerc under that same kind of pressure, keeping Charles Leclerc honest in third place. With 15 laps left to go in this one. Carlos Sainz up into 5th after George Russell decided to come in and pit. See George Russell's lap times are 1:13.9. It's the kind of thing we need from George Russell, to be fair. Carlos Sainz a 1:15.1, Sergio Perez a 1:15.5. George Russell's going to be ramping up towards them very, very quickly. In fact, let me have a little look at where they are, shall we? Sainz, Perez, and Russell. I mean, yeah, it's looking pretty good from George Russell. If you look at how much time he made on that first lap. So George Russell pitted under pressure from Carlos Sainz, knew that Carlos Sainz was going to get past eventually. So decided to cut his losses. Did George Russell, you can see here, came into the pit. Look how steep that blue line is in comparison to the red and darker blue line above. Goodness gracious. Like, George Russell is flying. That's going to be such a tight battle towards the end of this Grand Prix. It's gone from 17 seconds behind to 13 seconds behind already. Lewis Hamilton was also only 4 seconds adrift of that. But Russell going so quick. Ridiculous right now. Lando Norris still 16 seconds the lead. Max Verstappen pretty much guaranteed for second as well. Oscar Piastri has just closed in a touch over the last couple of laps to Charles Leclerc, but then Carlos Sainz has also closed into Piastri as well. Carlos Sainz, though, 6 seconds adrift. Can't imagine him getting there. 14 laps to go. Be very, very impressive if Carlos Sainz manages to catch Piastri, considering he's also on older tyres than Oscar Piastri right now. Sergio Perez in a little bit of no man's land in 6th place. 29 laps done on those hard compound tyres. A poor lap from him last time around as well. 1:16.1 to a 1:14.1 from George Russell. And again, that blue line absolutely cataclysmically taking time out of Sergio Perez. Yeah, Gasly, whilst we've been looking at the top 8, has also closed in fairly substantially on Nico Hülkenberg. We were expecting those tyres to finally fall off a cliff for Nico Hülkenberg, and the time could be now. 44 laps completed on those hard tyres for Hülkenberg. Gasly has been kind of best of the rest so far. Hülkenberg's had his time as best of the rest this season. Gasly wanting that spot for himself in the Alpine, half a second behind the German. Let's keep an eye on Pierre Gasly's lap time. Gasly and Hülkenberg actually only just ahead of Lando Norris. Lando Norris has lapped almost everyone in this outside of the top 8 in this Grand Prix. It probably will lap Gasly and Hülkenberg fairly soon as well. Here we are then. Gasly, DRS wide open. Hülkenberg's tyres absolutely screaming. Gasly deciding to go around the outside of turn 1. We've seen him do it at the beginning of the Grand Prix. We've seen him earlier on as well. He's going to hang around the outside and does. Once again gets that move done. Gasly around the outside of turn 1 today. Just been able to get those moves done and dusted every single time, it's felt like. And Gasly now up into 9th place and that best of the rest spot for the Frenchman. And down Hulkenberg into 10th place. Fernando Alonso, the next driver along the road, 3 seconds adrift of Hulkenberg. Let's see then. 12 laps left to go. Hulkenberg praying he can hold on to those tyres until the end. 45 laps already completed. 12 laps left to go. Be a mega stint from Nico Hulkenberg. Or is another 11th place finish staring Hulkenberg in the face? Could definitely be another 11th place for him. Lando Norris. Just a little replay. Wondering what's happening here. Nothing too untoward. 16.5 seconds the lead now he has at the beginning. Hulkenberg. Oh, no. Yeah. Alonso has now stepped it up a level. Hulkenberg a 118.5. Alonso a 115.6. I think Hulkenberg is going to absolutely drop off a cliff now in terms of performance. Looks like they have reached the end of the hard compound tyres. Charles Leclerc still under pressure from Piastri. Piastri biding his time still, or maybe has just not got the tyres that he was expecting to at this point, considering Piastri's tyres are almost 10 laps younger than Charles Leclerc's. Leclerc has done a great job at just holding the Australian at bay, holding on to that podium place. Norris, Verstappen, Leclerc still our top 3. Piastri in 4th, Sainz 5th, Sergio Perez 6th. Russell in 7th place. But again, we're watching George Russell chunk away time. Nearly a second every single lap on Sergio Perez. Then Hamilton down in 8th place. Done really well, actually, to get up into 8th place from 14th at the beginning as Lewis Hamilton back to where he should really be. Gasly in 9th spot. Best of the rest. I think he has been best of the rest so far this race. A really, really good start from Gasly. Jumped the Aston Martins and from there has driven very, very well indeed. It's Nico Hulkenberg and now under pressure from Fernando Alonso. And I think it's going to happen sooner rather than later that the Spaniard takes that 10th place spot. And Nico Hulkenberg once again just misses out on a point scoring place. Let's get Piastri under the rear wing of Charles Leclerc. Not able to do it, though. Lewis Hamilton takes the fastest lap of the Grand Prix. The bonus point, of course, for that fastest lap, not to be shunned. Hamilton with a 113.8. 2.5 seconds adrift from George Russell now. That could be interesting if Lewis Hamilton suddenly overtakes George Russell in all of this. Russell has actually fallen away from Sergio Perez a touch over the last few sectors. Only 8 cars not lapped. Unfortunately, it's a short circuit. It's a very short circuit. And also, Lando Norris is 20 seconds ahead of Verstappen. That's almost a third of a lap right there. A quarter of a lap. Right there. 20 seconds. So, he is absolutely flying. This could be very interesting. Let's see what George Russell and Lewis Hamilton's lap times are like. Because Russell is trying to get his way through some traffic here. There's Sonoda in the way. There's Sargent in the way. But Hamilton is going very, very swift. Hamilton is the faster of the 2 Mercedes cars. Do the team put Hamilton ahead? Ooh. That would be very, very interesting. If he forces the Mercedes team to make that call. I definitely would not want to be the man making that call. Where are we at? Oh, we're almost at 500 likes, 497 likes. If we could hit that like button and get over the 500 like margin, that would be absolutely incredible. Thank you guys so much for the support throughout this Grand Prix as we go into the final 8 laps. Lando Norris leading by a substantial margin, and a few little stories yet to play out, but looking like most are settled in to happening. Fernando Alonso has indeed got past Nico Hülkenberg up into 10th place. That story has settled itself. Alonso too far adrift from Gasly, in my opinion. Hamilton and Russell finally into some clean air, so we'll actually be able to see what they are going to do. Sauber 19th and 20th. Yeah, unfortunately, that is where they are going to be, unfortunately. If you didn't see my video over the summer break about where the cars are in comparison to one another, the Stake Sauber car is still very, very far off where you would want them to be, considering they are supposedly going to be competitive in 2026 under Audi. Not so sure myself. McLaren stopped Oscar on pit stop strategy. Left him too late. Yeah, it does feel like that, doesn't it? I feel like they tried to do something a bit different, right? They tried to leave him out a little bit longer so that he'd have fresher tyres now. But having 9-lap fresher hard compound tyres right at the end of the race just doesn't seem to be having much of an effect, because Charles Leclerc is just disappearing up the road and holding Piastri at arm's length. Sergio Perez up in 6th place. George Russell came in, pitted, wanted to go onto the soft compound tyre, but it really hasn't gone for them, has it? Oh, Live at the CT gifted some memberships. Thank you very much, mate. Massively appreciate that. Thank everybody for getting those memberships. If you got a membership, say thank you. Begging for a crash. Yeah, I mean, a safety car would have, maybe changed it around a little bit, but it does feel like, unfortunately, Lando Norris has just had, well, not unfortunately for me, but unfortunately for the entertainment of the race, Lando Norris has just had way too much pace in comparison to Max Verstappen here today. And Charles Leclerc's being able to hold off Piastri. Piastri may be going for it now, is the within DRS range for the first time in a long time, and then just drops outside of it once again. Carlos Sainz also kind of gave up on catching the back of that pack. Sainz really holding for 5th place. Sergio Perez the same, as just been able to hold off Russell and Hamilton by considerable margin, really. Russell looked like he was on his way to being able to catch up to the back of them, but Russell's pace kind of fell off a cliff. Same with Hamilton, really. It felt like Hamilton might be able to do something on the soft compound tyres, but again, just kind of drifted away. Pace isn't quite there. Gasly best of the rest in 9th place, and then Fernando Alonso doing what Fernando Alonso does, picking up some points where he can in that Aston Martin car. I think he'll be frustrated that he lost that position to Gasly at the start, and that's where Gasly has just had that little bit better luck, had that little bit better run at things because of how the beginning of the race went for the Aston Martin car. Hülkenberg holding on in 11th place, drifted away from 10th, and it's very Hülkenberg to finish in 11th, isn't it? Very Hülkenberg indeed. Lance Stroll 12th, Daniel Ricciardo 13th place, Esteban Ocon in 14th. Albon is up into 15th after his 2-stop strategy just hasn't really clicked. Lewis Hamilton and George Russell, the only drivers that have made 2 stops and are going to finish inside the points, and that's mainly just because top 4 teams are way faster than the rest of the pack. And actually, they're at the back of that top four, aren't they? So the two-stop strategy, definitely not the one this weekend. And you go all the way down. Logan Sargent in 16th place. Yuki Tsunoda 17th. Also tried to do a two-stop. Hasn't quite made it work. Kevin Magnussen started at the back of the pack. He's up into 18th. And the two Stake Sauber cars have just been so incredibly slow. Both have done two-stop strategies. Both are still miles adrift of anything else. Surely there's some damage or something to Zhou Guanyu's car. 33 seconds behind Valtteri Bottas and 2 laps down on the leader. Not at all where Kick Sauber would want to be. Oscar Piastri is, yes, the only one left to play out, isn't it? Oscar Piastri. He's got another 4 laps left to go, but to be honest with you, just doesn't seem to be able to do it. Charles Leclerc has just done more than enough to keep Piastri at arm's length for this entire stint. And I can't see how these last 2 laps are going to be any different unless Charles Leclerc's tyres literally catch fire. Looking at Charles Leclerc managing to pick up a 3rd place finish in a Ferrari and a much improved return after the summer break for the Ferrari car. Especially when George Russell and Lewis Hamilton are down in 7th and 8th place. Leclerc and Sainz in 3rd and 5th. There's still a lot of twos and fros to go, isn't there, in terms of the constructor standings at least. And where these drivers are going to end up in that. 19 seconds unreal. Yeah, 20 seconds the gap now. Lando Norris, as soon as he got into the lead, he just made it his own, doesn't he? Completely made it his own. And flew away from the pack. Did Lando Norris. Is the track behind me Silverstone? No, that is Singapore. Lando Norris getting revenge for Austria. Yeah, I guess so, you could argue. I feel like Austria, there was a bit more to battle for, if you know what I mean. Whereas Max Verstappen just kind of had to bend to Lando Norris's will this time around. Just had nowhere near the pace to get anywhere close to the McLaren as it sailed past at the beginning, or sorry, at the end of that first stint. And then Verstappen just had to slot into 2nd place and accept that Lando Norris, even at Max Verstappen's home Grand Prix, just been way, way quicker. Finally, a 2nd win coming. I know, waited, watched. Hungary, of course, had to give that win over to Oscar Piastri. Austria should have been that, but ended up colliding with Verstappen. There's been a good few opportunities for Lando Norris to get that 2nd victory for the season. You go all the way back to Imola, really. Imola was within that touching distance of Verstappen. Monaco just didn't qualify quite as well as his teammate. Canada was in the mix with Verstappen and Russell, just came out the wrong side of it. Spain ended up missing out because he messed up the start. Austria collided with Verstappen. Great Britain, the strategy went against him. Didn't go onto those medium tyres at the end. Hungary had to give the position to his teammate. Like, been a lot of races where Lando Norris has been in the mix for the victory and possibly, you could argue, has deserved it. But this time around, he has signed, sealed, delivered it, and gotten away by an absolute mile. It has been a masterclass from Lando Norris. Yes, he lost the position at the beginning of the Grand Prix after qualifying on pole by over 0.4 of a second to Max Verstappen behind. He dominated qualifying. He's dominated the Grand Prix. And Lando Norris is going to take his 2nd win in Formula 1. Comes towards the final sector. The final couple of corners are calling. Round turn 13, 14, all the way around the banking. The Orange Army is going to have to stand for the orange car of Lando Norris, who takes his 2nd victory in Formula 1. And we absolutely love it. McLaren on the top step of the podium. Valtteri Bottas comes across the line behind him. Has messed up the timing sheets. Valtteri Bottas is not 2nd. Neither is Gasly 3rd. Neither is Gasly 2nd, but That is how far ahead Lando Norris was. Teams are going to slot in. Max Verstappen takes the second place finish. My goodness me, it is smoke bombs galore. You can barely even see the start finish straight anymore. Charles Leclerc comes in just behind in third place. Piastri does slot into fourth. Carlos Sainz manages to nab a fifth place finish. It's going to be sixth place for Sergio Perez, seventh and eighth for George Russell and Lewis Hamilton. As the two Mercedes cars come across the line, Gasly's going to slot into ninth place. Fernando Alonso picks up that final point scoring position. And Nico Hülkenberg, I think I said it at one point, just always finishes 11th. He's there in 11th place once again for him. Thank you guys so much for watching. It's been absolutely, well, I was going to say, it's very entertaining. Hasn't been an absolute barn burner of a Grand Prix. Lando Norris made sure that it was his to win, as he even set the fastest lap of the Grand Prix right at the end there with a 1:13.8 to pick himself up a bonus point. Lando Norris, absolutely the man who deserved the victory today. Max Verstappen second. Charles Leclerc comes in third. Really good performance from Charles Leclerc in third place, it has to be said. Piastri in fourth, a little bit frustrated. I think he'll be annoyed he wasn't able to keep himself in front of Charles Leclerc. Carlos Sainz and Sergio Perez will be fairly happy with fifth and sixth. I think George Russell might be a little bit annoyed by the strategy calls today and how he's ended up in seventh place. Lewis Hamilton did a good job to get up into eighth, where he should really be. And we've got Gasly down in ninth, Alonso in 10th. They'll be very happy indeed with some point scoring places. Hülkenberg 11th, Daniel Ricciardo 12th, Lance Stroll 13th after his 5-second penalty. Albon up into 14th after that disqualification from qualifying. Esteban Ocon 15th, Logan Sargent 16th, Yuki Tsunoda in 17th place. Kevin Magnussen 18th, and the two Stick Saubers at the end. Whoa, life of CT. He broke the streak. Let's go, Lando. Number one indeed. 140 ZAR. I don't know what ZAR is, but thank you very much indeed for the super chat there. Massively appreciated. If you do want to help out the channel, leave a like on this video. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. We'll be live a little bit later on. I need to get your post-race reactions over on the community tab. And if you want to help out the channel even more, there is a link to a little survey in the comments down below. Complete that survey. Let me know your thoughts on the channel for the second half of the season. We will be back once again next weekend for Monza in terms of these qualifying and race live streams. But I will be live later on today. Hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss it. We'll be back with your guys' opinions on what is going to happen throughout this second half of the season and how you thought the Netherlands Grand Prix went. But thank you guys so much for watching again. I'll see you a little bit later on.